Hey there, welcome back to the Complicated Kids podcast. I'm your host, Gabriele Nicolet. I am a toddler whisperer, a parent coach, and a speech therapist. And today I have Katie May with me. Katie, welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here and talk all things teens in crisis and anything else that comes up in that conversation.
I am as well. Before we get started, and we're going to be talking about teens today. Tell the good people a little bit about yourself and the work you do.
Absolutely. I'm a licensed therapist in the state of Pennsylvania, and I lead a team of other therapists. We specialize in high-risk teens and their parents. And I'm a two-time author. I wrote a book for parents of teens with self-destructive behaviors. It's called You're on Fire, It's Fine. I have a second book coming out in July. It's for therapists, training them in my framework for treating high-risk teens. And I teach and train on this topic all over the world. I'm excited to talk about it today.
I'm delighted to have you. I really am. And I love the title of your book because I do think that that is pretty much the message that we're giving a lot of children is like, yeah, you're on fire. It's okay. I don't know what to do. And it's not that I don't care, but I don't know. Is that kind of where that title
Yeah,
comes from?
it is. So it's this idea that when we have a biologically sensitive individual, and I would put neurodivergent folks, myself included, into that category of being very sensitive, highly reactive, take a long time to get back down to a baseline or calm down. So this is the biologically sensitive person. It feels like you are on fire with your emotions. They're big, they're overwhelming, they're all consuming. So that's the on fire piece. And then we take an individual who is biologically sensitive, neurodivergent, or just has some of those qualities, and we put them in an environment that doesn't have the right language or skills to respond to it. They're often saying things like, "You're fine. That wasn't a big deal. Go take a walk. You're probably just tired. Take a nap." So we're dismissing, minimizing, offering simple solutions, which that's the "you're fine" piece. And what happens is that over time, these individuals start to internalize, like, well, is it easy to solve this problem and I just can't do it? Like, is everything fine and my emotion meter is faulty? And they start to doubt themselves. They start to think there must be something wrong with them, that everyone else is saying it's fine and I can handle this. And so anytime a big emotion like that comes up in the future, they engage in a self-destructive behavior or an impulsive behavior to make that emotion go away because they've gotten this message that it's not okay.
Say that part again. Self-injurious, or you say it because you're going to say it way better than I am.
Yeah, so it's this idea that, and it's, I want to be clear, it's not like one time a parent missed the mark and then all of a sudden they have a teen who, or a child who's escalating. This is a repeated pattern over time when we have a biologically sensitive individual. I call them fire feelers, just as a short way to say like they're on fire with their own emotions. And we put them in an environment that doesn't know how to respond. They often get the message that their feelings are bad or wrong. And so they learn strategies to make those feelings go away quickly. And those strategies are often self-destructive, impulsive, things like self-harm, cutting, but also things like running away, lashing out, melting down. So all of these big behaviors that we see in essence are a solution for the kids that we work with. They're problematic, but when we're just looking at them as the problem and missing the underlying emotion, we're missing the bigger message.
Yeah. And which is and this is where we get to, this is maybe an extreme example, but it is a clear example. Behavior is communication.
Yes.
Behavior, and this is what I've been saying a lot lately, which is outside behavior is a reflection of what's happening internally. So if you have chaotic outside behavior, you have chaos inside. Think about how awful that feels. And lots of the people I'm talking to are mostly parents of children
Yeah.
who are behaving in said manner. And that kind of stops them in their tracks sometimes. They're like, I hadn't quite thought of it that way.
Yes, all behavior is communication. All behavior carries a message. So I love that this is the message that you're sharing as well. And oftentimes when we see these self-destructive behaviors, it's like the trailhead for us understanding that something really big and painful is happening inside. So we want to use as parents and professionals our validation skills to speak to the emotion underneath rather than just trying to punish or get rid of the behavior.
Okay, now this is where we run into trouble very quickly because We are afraid. We are resistant. We are at a lack of knowledge and or verbiage for what the hell do we even say?
Yeah, well, and I kind of want to speak to all of those pieces. I think that first part of I'm afraid to validate this. There is definitely this element of if I say the words of are you thinking of hurting yourself or are you thinking of not wanting to be alive or even, more strong language than that,
Mhm.
then is it putting an idea in my kid's head that wasn't there? Is it going to make them do it if they weren't before? And the truth is that when we can say to our child, hey, I see how much you're struggling right now. So we're not necessarily saying, we're saying something like, I can understand how if this is where your brain took you to this conclusion or this behavior or this solution, it must mean there's something really big or painful underneath of that. So I see how much you're hurting right now. So when we say it that way, we're not saying anything about the behavior. We're just saying, hey, I see how hard this is for you. And I also think it's helpful to clarify that, like, you might not get the language exactly right. Parents want to know, well, what's the script? What's the way to say this? So I'm a teen specialist. I have a teenager. I get the words wrong all the time. I've learned over time that sometimes it's not words, sometimes it's just sitting there and not saying anything. And so I really try and encourage caregivers to understand that it's like learning a new language, but also you're committed to learning that new language. If you were traveling to another country where you didn't speak the language, you'd get on Duolingo, you'd look up the culture, you'd try and understand it. So it's no different than that, and you're even more committed to it because it's your own child.
Yeah, I, I believe everything you just said. And oftentimes we are all in a culture that says, I think, you tell me what you think of this.
Go for
Your,
it.
your children are your essentially your property. They are extensions of you walking around in the world.
Mhm.
And therefore, XYZ fill in the blank in terms of what they should or shouldn't be doing and how we should or shouldn't have to be reacting or interacting with them. How do you handle that when parents are coming to you with a lot of resistance about like, well, this just shouldn't be happening?
Yeah. Well, so there's several parts of that with everything. I never have like one simple answer for anything. But I would say, and I talk about this in my book, Judgments That Fuel the Fire, and you just said should, like you should handle it this way, or our kids should be behaving this way. And we might have some preconceived notions about what is acceptable for our family, our values, our rules, and that's all okay. However, when we fall into this blame or shame continuum, when we fall into, what did I do to deserve this? I was a bad mother. This is all my fault. Or you need to get it better, get it together. You need to do something differently. This is not the way that we behave. None of those things are changing the behavior. And in fact, they're making somebody feel way worse in the situation. But what it comes down to for me is that when I see this blame and shame continuum, and it's like they're on either side, when we come to the middle of that, what's there is usually grief. It's usually, this is not the life that I imagined. This is not how I want things to be, but this is the life that I have. And it's not as easy as just saying those words to accept that. We need to grieve, be sad, seek support. Also, maybe process that our family of origin, our own parents, our aunts, uncles, whoever might have their own opinions about what we're doing and how we're choosing to raise our children. And all of those are really valid concerns for a parent to process in parent coaching or parent therapy or some kind of parent support, but they're not the child's responsibility to solve or change.
Ooh, yes. Okay. You said so many things that are just zinging around. One of which is this notion of emotions, feelings, grief, for example.
Mhm.
In order for grief to be processed, metabolized, whatever verb we want to use in terms of like, what's that thing that happens when we actually feel a feeling?
Mhm.
Right? Because everything that you were saying before about teens who are engaging in impulsive behaviors or teens who are, and you didn't say this one, but numbing, for example, and
Yeah,
adults do this too, right?
for sure.
All of that are just kind of levels of avoidance
Mhm.
of feeling emotion. where do you have, please tell me you have some wisdom to share with me on when did feelings get to be the bad guys that are to be resisted instead of felt? Like, why are we so bad at this?
So I think a lot of it is that we have so many distractions. And of course, it makes sense that if we're feeling uncomfortable, if we're feeling pain, if we're feeling grief, that we have access to so many things to make that easier, distract us, numb us out. And why wouldn't people seek that out? And so what it comes down to is having to make some choices, recognizing that there is something that's getting in the way. There may be an emotion that's leading to behaviors that is getting in the way of your life. So we have to choose to want to change that behavior, but I don't think that's enough. I don't think it's enough to just say, let's stop doing this thing, because what I see it as is it's a survival strategy for a lot of folks. Like I get through the day, not me, an individual gets through the day by having 2 glasses of wine at night or whatever. Like it's their coping strategy. It's how they regulate and live their lives. Removing that is just increasing their level of pain or struggle without really giving them any solution.
Yep.
So we need to, on the other end of that, build a life that is so good, that makes so much sense, that works with their nervous system and their way their brain works and all these other things, that those coping strategies are incompatible. They're no longer needed in their lives. And that's a big ask that takes a lot of work to get there. But that's really how I see it, is we have to build the life on the other side that no longer requires those survival strategies.
And my suspicion is that about half the people listening who have complicated kids just checked out because they're like, well, I can't have that because my kid's complicated. What do you say?
Would you like me to respond to that?
I would.
Yeah. Well, hold on. I need to pause and think about it. So I'm gonna share on different levels. I was that complicated kid, and I am here now. And so it does get better. I have that complicated kid, and I am struggling with grief and stress and challenges. And that doesn't mean that it's all or nothing. It doesn't mean that I don't still feel joy in my relationships, feel fulfillment in my work, enjoy moments with my child. Like there are so many things that still bring joy, fulfillment, contentment, okayness. I think it's about not looking at it as all or nothing. It's acknowledging, like, yes, you do have these struggles, but who among us doesn't have a struggle? Like, we're all dealing with something. And so it's finding your reality within that and figuring out what makes sense for you.
I love that. Thank you. That was brilliant, first of all. And just the like the totality of human experience is right. These vast extremes sometimes.
Yeah.
And the higher the highs, the lower the lows at some level. And kind of making room for all of that. And I love it's never either or, it's always both and.
Yeah.
And coming there, coming out of either or into both and, which, okay, fine. I'll share this analogy. I just got the like a teeter totter, right?
Okay.
Either or on either side.
Yeah.
Both and lives in the middle. That's the most stable place to be.
Yeah.
That's when you will have the experience of being on the seesaw, but you're not going to fall off and you're not going to get too rattled. Again, which is not the same as saying you're not going to have experiences that rattle you. You will, but you will also come back from those.
Well, I have a visual for you because I thought about this a lot and I came to this realization that, in addition to being a parent and a person who struggles with depression and has neurodivergence, I own multiple businesses and my life is very chaotic. And so I remember this moment clearly where I was like, I just need everything to stop. I feel like my life is like I'm balancing on top of a rolling beach ball and I just need the beach ball to stop. And I think parenting feels like this a lot. Like I just need everything to stop. I need the absence of all these stressors. But what I recognized over time and work was that what I actually needed was to learn how to balance on top of a rolling beach ball, that the beach ball was never going to stop rolling. And so to me, that's a perfect example of what it means to process your grief and radically accept is like, this is the life. How do we live within the life rather than try and change all the details of the life?
Yeah. Oh gosh, I love it. Back to, I want to talk a little bit about this fear piece. Before we hit record, we were talking about kind of neurodivergent teens in crisis in particular. And so when things reach crisis pitch, what what are we to do? How are and maybe there isn't one answer, but you can pick an example or you can, answer this question however you like. But like, what do we do?
Yeah, so I'm going to talk you through what I see as the revolving door of hospitalization. And maybe some folks have never experienced this, thankfully, and some folks are going to resonate deeply with this because it is their unrelenting crisis and, everyday life. So what happens is when we have a fire feeler, when we have someone who feels their emotions in big ways, and we know that that comes with having these self-destructive or impulsive behaviors, that can escalate. The bigger the feelings, the bigger and the scarier the behaviors. The people in that child, teenager's life are understandably worried, scared, don't want them to do something to escalate it, make it worse. They don't want to lose their child. So there gets to be a point when that level of risk is no longer tolerated because it's too scary. And so parents, professionals make the decision to hospitalize, like a psychiatric hospitalization.
Mhm.
When the teenager's in the hospital, sometimes they feel better, sometimes they don't. Sometimes it's more traumatic for them. This is something we process a lot with my population. But they're learning general skills in a general population. But while they're there, parents feel a little bit safer. My teen's on a locked unit. They don't have access to ways to harm themselves. They're being monitored 24/7. I can get a full night's sleep because I don't have to wake up and check on them 3 times and make sure they're still breathing in their bed. So parents feel a little safer. Professionals feel a little bit safer as well because the liability is not on them. They don't have to make the call. There's no what if somebody does something while they're on my watch. So
Mhm.
they feel better until this teenager who learned general skills on a general population comes out of the hospital, still has the same triggers, stressors, relationships, demands. So that cycle ramps up again, emotions, behaviors, and then everyone says, this is too much. Let's hospitalize. And so they find themselves stuck in this cycle. The clients that I work with have been hospitalized 6 to 10 times by the time they find me in my treatment center because they've been stuck in this cycle of hospitalization. And so what we need to do to break that cycle, it's multiple parts. One, helping our teen clients, helping teenagers understand what that escalation looks and feels like for them. So we're stopping it sooner. Two, giving parents the skills that they need to tolerate escalating risk, to validate sooner, to also directly assess risk with the words and ability to do so. And then three, teaching therapists, which is also something I do, to adequately treat clients and families in the outpatient setting without freaking out, pushing panic, and sending them to the hospital in the first place. So the entire system needs to shift in order for us to shift this cycle.
Well, and it's so interesting as you're talking, really what you're talking about is a ballooned up version of what has been happening for decades in some cases in these families, which is kid has big emotion, nobody quite knows what to do, we bribe, we do whatever, we send people to their rooms. This is kind of that equivalent, the hospital equivalent of being sent to your room because you're having a big feeling and that
That's
nobody.
exactly it.
Yeah. Oof. Oh man, Katie, I'm feeling this a lot actually right now. And so if you're listening and this is feeling overwhelming, I invite you to either get your feet on the ground or imagine that they're on the ground and take a deep breath because this can get heavy very quickly, I think.
Mhm.
Um, and what do you tell parents for whom this is a lot?
It is a lot, and I appreciate you saying that because sometimes I think I forget because I do this every day, all day. It's my normal conversations with me and my team. It's a lot and it's overwhelming. And what I will say is when it's your own child, you can have as much information as possible, and you're still going to completely fall apart if they tell you that they're thinking of hurting themselves. And so, what I always recommend is that parents seek their own support because there's a lot to process. In addition to learning new skills, you want to seek support so that you can talk about this with someone who gets it. This is not, you can't just go grab coffee with a girlfriend and talk about these kinds of things. And it's also even more isolating when you think about like, all of your friends saying things like, oh, Johnny's going off to college. Kayla got the lead in the school play. And you're over here thinking, like, how do I get through the day with a child who's really struggling? It feels very lonely. And so I just want to acknowledge that it's big, it's heavy, it's isolating. And there are people like me who do this every day, all day, and who are ready to jump in and support you and not be freaked out by anything that you might say. And we can handle it and have a plan for how to get you to the other side. And that's something I see all the time too, is that we have clients that come to us and they're on the brink, right? Parents are like, I don't know what else to do. Should we send them to a residential? And they are the same clients that years later we get like graduation pictures from college and parents that say that they're shining and they're living their lives. And I like to reinforce that piece is that, I use myself as an example, but we've seen hundreds of clients go through this and come out the other side as happy, healthy, fulfilled individuals.
I love that. Okay. That's, we're going to pin it here. I know we could go several hours more, but if people want to learn more about you, Katie May, and the work that you do, what do they do?
So the best place to find all the information for parents, for professionals, access to my counseling center, all those things is katiekmay.com. You'll find links to everything there. You can also find me on social media at Katie K. May and can connect with you in that space.
Perfect. And that's May with a Y. And Katie with an IE, just if we're being very precise. We will link to all of that in the show notes. Katie, what a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.